What up, chat? Yo, as you come in, say what's up. Say what's up as you come in. Tell me where you watching from. W chat. What up, chat? What's today? Wednesday? Dude, I swear I always lose a day whenever I work from home. Alright, guys, we are live. It is Wednesday, February 26th. I feel like the year is flying. I don't know. As you get older, it's like time's just not the same. I feel like the year is literally flying. Like, I'm like, it's almost March next week? Like, what? But, what's up, guys? So, what's up, everybody? It is Wednesday, February 26th. We are live. Welcome to Cozy Corner TV. We're going to be reacting to about, I say 2 stories today in this live. I'm going to end up doing a double live today because I'm going to run the streaming platform software. I did that about 2 days ago. Wasn't bad. I wasn't very enthusiastic about the results, but it wasn't horrible. And the reason why we're going to mainly do 2 stories today, 2 stories and then end with a clip from Cliff, right? That's the slogan on the channel when we end the live. We end with a clip from Cliff. But we're going to be reacting to Bill O'Reilly and Stephen A. Smith. They're having a conversation on James Carville and the Democratic Party. So James Carville made a couple of comments towards Stephen A. Smith, kind of saying that, you know, he's talking out of his behind and he doesn't really know what he's talking about and the Democrats are great. And then we're going to jump over to President Donald Trump actually hosted his first cabinet meeting today. And I did get a chance to watch that live, so that was cool. And Elon also got a chance to speak to the cabinet. And then, of course, the press just asked him press questions. Let's just say that. But with that being said, the last clip will also be a clip from Cliff. And then that's a Christian clip that we always end our live streams with. So with that being said, welcome to Cozy Corner TV, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Karen Smith. Call me Q. And we are on the corner. So Bill O'Reilly and Stephen A. Smith, they are first up on the menu to be served. I actually didn't watch this whole thing. It's about 13 minutes. Yeah, I don't believe I finished it, but I did watch a good decent amount of it, a good portion of it, you know. So we'll just jump in. We'll see what they're talking about. Yeah, and then I'll do some commentary.
Stephen A. Smith is the highest paid sportscaster in the country. He works for ESPN,
Say what's up,
the
Chad.
morning show. And he has done extraordinarily well at the Disney Corporation. He's by far and away their most popular sports star. But you may have noticed over the last year or so that Stephen A. has gone into public policy somewhat. He appears on News Nation. He appears on Sean Hannity's program and talks about very important things other than sports. Okay, because of that, Stephen A. has put himself in a position to criticize both parties.
And I would say I agree with Bill O'Reilly here. So I think it was 2 days ago, maybe 3, but I think 2. I did a live stream where we did a reaction to basically Steve Smith telling the Democrats that they are making not a horrible decision in making him a presidential nominee. It's not set in stone, but it is said that Stephen A. Smith is being looked at as a 2028 presidential nominee, which I thought was hilarious, right? But he's a strong voice for the Democrats. So it kind of makes sense because the Democrats really don't have a leader right now, right? It's not Hakeem Jeffries, so we're not going there, right? And it's not a lot of other people that a lot of people think it could be. They really don't have a voice right now. So when I put that panel up, we saw AOC on there. We saw Kamala Harris. She actually was at the highest percentage. She was at 33%. I think AOC was at like 6. Gavin Newsom was at 7. Pete Buttigieg was at like maybe 8 or 9. He wasn't actually that far behind. Maybe he was 6. And Gavin Newsom was a little bit higher than that. And then, like I said, AOC was on there. I know I'm forgetting somebody else, but Stephen A. Smith, he was the last presidential nominee towards the end. And he basically said to the Democratic Party, which is what I covered about 2 days ago on the live, was, you guys suck. That's the only reason why I'm even being considered for this. So he's saying that the Democratic Party doesn't have anyone. He's saying the only reason why I would even be being considered for this is because the Democrats suck right now. I mean, it's a hard pill to swallow. You know, if you are if you are the type of Democrat, if you, let's say, bleed blue, you know, if you are the type of Democrat that no matter who's in office, like, you're gonna vote for a Democrat. So it is a hard pill to swallow right now. I felt like the only person that was really honest was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She was on The View and they asked her a question. She didn't fully answer it, but she started to, and then she kind of switched the subject. But in her started to answer, she said, I think the Democrats are experiencing whiplash. And I thought to myself, wow, at least one person can be transparent in what the Democratic Party might be dealing with, right? Like, just be honest about it, just whiplash. They didn't expect President Trump to win, and they probably didn't expect the Republicans to take the entire House, right? So it's an experience for the Democrats right now. I think it's a sight to see because normally the Democrats are in some part of the government. It's just normally always been like that historically. And it almost seems like right now America has kicked them out. So I would agree with Bill O'Reilly when he says that Stephen A. Smith does have a voice to kind of criticize both sides. Not really. He really does better on the liberal side. If he really came for the conservative side, I think some people would come for him that I'm not going to say he wouldn't be ready for, but it would be a heated exchange. Let's just say that.
And James Carville took exception to Smith's criticism of the Democrats. Roll it.
When it comes to sports, I find him to be really insightful. When it comes to politics, he don't know his ass from a hole in the ground. He's on that running his mouth about how he may have to run as a Democrat because there's nothing left of the Democratic Party. There's no talent. Stephen A., you me?
First order of business. Sir, do you have to be so rude? You know, dropping F-bombs and going all, going off like that. I mean, I know that's your nature. I understand that, but let's just say two can do that, you know. I mean, if you really wanted to get raw, ain't nobody hiding from that. I could be that way. It's just that my mama taught me to respect my elders. And you are 80 years of age, if I remember correctly.
I think it's interesting. Like, so in the comments, a lot of people came for James Carville. Like, they really said, you know, what right does James Carville have to criticize Stephen A. Smith on this? He gave him some credit, right? He said, when it comes to sports, I think he's really insightful. When it comes to politics, he doesn't know his behind from a hole in the ground. Okay, well, that's his opinion, right? Like, Stephen A. Smith does have an audience, and it is relatively large, and he's not somebody who's out of touch with the people. He talked about this on his own during some point of this video with Bill O'Reilly, and he said, you know, the Democrats are really out of touch with the people right now. And the only reason why Stephen A. Smith is probably being looked at is because right now he has a voice that resonates with the people. And that's really why AOC doesn't get as shunned as people probably want her to be, because the Democrats have a problem reaching the people. And she's also another one who is not, she's not tone deaf to how to talk to the crowd. Let's just say that. She might be tone deaf to what America needs slightly, but as far as how to reach, let's say, millennials, Gen Z, you know, she usually is the one that says, hey, Democrats, this is the way you do it. Jasmine Crockett, another one who is very vocal and out there for the Democratic Party. But again, you don't see a lot of people. I would say Pete Buttigieg, like, we see him often and out there advocating, you know, in some way, shape, or form. But even when AOC did her speech down in New York a couple days ago, you had so many people in the comments just like, it shouldn't only be AOC, it shouldn't only be Jasmine Crockett. So even people on the Democratic side, on the left side, are saying, like, where is everybody? Like, why aren't the Democrats doing something? Why isn't anybody saying something? But people are saying something. It's just that they're not paying attention to how high President Trump's approval rating is. So people are paying attention, but at the same time, they don't care because the American people have spoken. They voted for President Trump to do a certain thing. And because he's doing that certain thing, the Democrats are kind of being ignored right now and being made fun of within their own party.
Joining us now from New Jersey is Stephen A. Smith. I think that's why you like me, because I'm so old. I think that's, now I got it. Now your mother said, hey, he's got to get old, you got to treat him pretty well. Okay,
You're old and wise, so it all works.
And I'm still good looking, and that's all that really matters.
Yeah. Listen, that's for somebody else to say, but you look good. You look good.
It's all like Botox. So over the past few weeks, the Washington Post, the New Yorker magazine, the New York Times Athletic, the New York Post, Fox News, News Nation have all done features on you about your political future, in their estimation. It's not like you said anything exactly like that. Why do you think that is? Why are you getting so much attention in this area?
Because I do something that the Democratic Party doesn't do at this particular moment in time. I resonate. It's really that simple. And I'm not saying that to brag on myself. I'm saying that to highlight the desolate state of affairs that exists within the Democratic Party. They haven't been very, very impressive, collectively speaking, of course. And I think that when you see the election and what the election results revealed, Donald Trump gets 77 million votes. He wins the popular vote. He wins the electoral college vote. He wins every swing state. He's up in like 50 counties. He gave her a run for her money in New York. They improved in California. And obviously they won the Senate, they won the House, and they maintained their stake in the House. In the Senate. They won the Senate and they maintained their stake in the House as well. You take all of those things into account, and there's just no question that the Democratic Party is in dire straits right now.
And who doesn't know that? But you have so many people that they can't be honest about that. And that whiplash that Jasmine Crockett is talking about, Stephen A. Smith just went down the list. They maintained their position, and they took the presidency, and they took the Senate. So it's like, at this point, the Democrats are kind of like, yo, what is happening right now? That's not normal. This is what I'm saying. Like, historically, it's just not normal for the Democrats to be completely out of the government. Am I saying, like, we know that there are Democrats in the government. We have Senate hearings, and we would see both parties there, right? Even independent. So that goes to say, without really being said. But what I'm trying to say is that the Democratic Party in itself, like, it's hurting right now. And people are having a hard time just being honest about how much dire straits it's actually in. The fact that the Republicans came in and took the whole entire thing, it would be whiplash for the government, because for the Democrats, because just historically it hasn't been like that. The Democrats are usually not totally removed from power, and it kind of seems like that right now, right? And that's why we see them being so reactive right now. They don't need to be proactive. This is driving me crazy, because they don't realize that they're doing this against their own president. It doesn't matter that they're Democrats. It's one president for the entire country. President Trump is the president of the Democrats as well. So when they're doing things like creating a Trump task force, when they're doing things like protesting outside in DC and in New York, and they're saying things like, we will win and things like that, it's like, dude, you do understand that, like, you're literally trying to sabotage your own president. So no, they obviously don't understand that, or they don't care.
And so when you hear me pointing out some of the things that I pointed out, I'm not one of those guys, Bill, who believes that because you think differently than me, you're a racist. You're anti-black.
No, you don't play that. I never heard you play that part.
I don't play that game.
Why do you think Carville gets so upset about this? Well, what is it that you're doing that annoys him?
Well, you know this better than me, because you're the veteran in politics over the last 50, 60 plus years, 50 years plus. I'm not going to go the 60 route because you're not that old. But here's the deal. In the end, when you look at a guy like James Carville, who came across as a bit truculent to say the least, I think that, first of all, he misquoted me. I did not say there was no talent in the Democratic Party. I said there was no one who was resonating. They did not have a voice. I happen to know Westmore, the governor of Maryland. He's a friend of mine. I mean, I like him a great, great deal. We've become friends. I enjoyed my interview with Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. I just finished interviewing a few minutes ago, minority leader of the House, Mr. Hakeem Jeffries. So it's not like the Democratic Party is devoid of talent. That's not what I said. But they are devoid of a voice. They are devoid of somebody who resonates on a national level.
Yeah, and I think he's spot on when he says that. Ben Shapiro, when I was saying that I can't remember the other person who's a part of that 2028 possible presidential nominee list, Ben Shapiro was the other one who was on there. I almost said his name in a Spanish way. Sorry, Ben. But yeah, so he's the other one who's on there. He was pretty decent. I think he was at like either 9 or 7%. So, not as high. Like Kamala's still in the running. She was at 33%, but clearly I don't think she's not going to take the presidency. And a lot of people are saying that they don't think the Democrats will put up a female just because it's been 2 times and it just hasn't worked. Although the interesting thing is that some do say on the other side that if there were to be a female president that was a Republican, that there are some people that are saying that they would actually vote for her. I don't know if it's time yet. It could be, right? It could be. And America might be more okay with a Republican female president at this point, I feel like, with the Democrat, than the Democratic female president, just because the Republicans took the entire House. So someone mentioned Megyn Kelly, which I thought that was funny. I was actually reacting to it on live. I forgot which news station it was, but and which host it was, but it was pretty funny. They lean a little bit more on the conservative side. I didn't think it was impossible, right? And I didn't think it was a bad call. Some people have also said Tulsi Gabbard would be a decent nominee. So, we'll see what happens.
And I think James Carville took exception to that primarily because he forgot that he was the one saying it too. Which is why on my show, when I clapped back at him, I played some clips of him saying the same damn thing that I said. Because he had been lamenting that. And I think
you want to get Carville on your podcast, which is very successful.
I'm going on his. Going on his.
There's a couple of things in play. Number one, there is no leader in the Democratic Party. That would be my first question, Carl. Who's the leader? Chuck Schumer? Come on. There's no leader. They don't have anybody. Kamala resurfaced at the NAACP, didn't really make a dent, so that it's wide open. Number two, Trump opened the gates for populist candidates. And if you ever decided to get into politics, that's what you would be, a populist candidate. You would be going right to the people and say, look, I feel for you, and I'm going to, if you elect me, I'm going to try to solve some of your problems. That's what Trump did. And
I think Bill O'Reilly is onto something here when he says that Trump kind of paved the way for populist candidates. Somebody who goes basically straight to the people and says, hey, I hear the things that you're going through. Basically, I hear your gripes, your moans. Your problems are not being solved or answered. You're being ignored, and I'm here to help. I believe that Bill O'Reilly is spot on when he says that. Donald Trump definitely did open a door for populist candidates. And this is intriguing to me because it sets the stage for endless possibilities of people who could step up and run. Let's just say that. Endless possibilities. This is primarily the reason why Stephen A. Smith actually running for the Democratic Party isn't impossible. Like Bill O'Reilly said it earlier in the video. Already it's been Fox News, MSNBC, I believe Sky News did it. There's been a couple of mainstream media news stations that have covered Stephen Smith's political time frame, if you will, and they say that, hey, this guy might actually have a decent shot at running for the Democratic Party, right? And he actually resonates with the people. Now, Stephen A. Smith said that himself, but Bill's not disagreeing, and I don't disagree with that either. That is a big problem with the Democratic Party. If you do not have somebody whose voice resonates, the American people are not going to vote for you. They're not going to vote for you. This is the reason why the Democrats are experiencing the whiplash that they are now. But the American people are like, why are you confused? At least majority, right? Because they want to put it out there like President Trump doesn't have a favorable approval rating, but he actually does. Like the numbers prove that he has a favorable approval rating and he's doing exceptionally better than he did his first term in.
This has been very successful for Trump. But right now, the Democratic Party is disarray. And Carville knows that, but it just seems to be he was insulted.
And not listening to him. That's where his real frustration comes from. And and please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they shouldn't listen to him. I think they should have listened to him. But I think that as is the case, in our society today on a plethora of platforms and in industries where you've got youngsters on the come up and they sort of ease the elder statesmen out of the mix because they want to run things themselves. I deal with that in sports too, where you have an abundance of individuals who were qualified and they couldn't get a job because the youngsters were placed at the helm and they didn't want to bring somebody in more knowledgeable than them. Take into account, you know your sports a little bit, Bill O'Reilly. Bill Belichick couldn't get an NFL job. The man has won 8 Super Bowl championships, 2 as a defensive coordinator, 6 as a head coach. And when he got let go by the New England Patriots, he couldn't get a job. He had to go back to college at the University of North Carolina to get a head coaching job.
They didn't want to give a guy like that
I know
control.
that. I know that. But what I'm saying is transitioning back to politics, you have people in positions of power within the Democratic establishment that clearly didn't want to listen to James Carville. So that could be a part of his frustration. But in the end, he came at the wrong person because I wasn't knocking him. I thought they should have listened to him. But when he clapped back at me, I'm like, wait a minute, you've been talking the same stuff that I've been saying. You must have forgot about that. Let me remind you. And that's
If you
about
really want to cut through it all, and no Democrat has the courage to say this, Joe Biden destroyed the party. He destroyed
Yes, I said that.
but you're not in the political arena. There's nobody in Congress or working in the Democratic precincts, no governor, nobody. Wes Moore, your buddy, when you talk to him and you ask him, did Joe Biden destroy the Democratic Party? He'll say no, or he won't answer the question.
I think Bill's making a great point here. This is very true because Stephen A. Smith said, I've said that, but Bill, he doesn't correct him, but he kind of interjects and he says, but you're not in the political arena, right? And it's true because he's not really in the political arena. Even if he says it and screams it, it doesn't really matter, right? Even if I say it and scream it, it doesn't really matter, right? Even if Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, right? Many of YouTubers that I appreciate their commentary and their let's just say their knowledge when it comes to conservatism and the Republican Party and what they know about it, right? Because for a long time I knew much about the Democratic Party, but kind of ignoring the Republican Party a little bit anyway, just because of stigmas, the things I grew up around, hearsay, right? I really didn't start to pay much attention to the Republican Party until I went into the Marine Corps. Now, when I went into the military, it was different because now you have different conversation. Like military personnel will tell you, we get paid differently when a Republican is in office than we do when a Democrat's in office. So when I joined the Marine Corps, this is when I got into politics. At this point, I've been out for some time and I joined right after high school. So if I date myself a little bit, this is at least 20 years that I've been paying attention to the Republican Party, right? So at the end of the day, and that's after at least the first 16 years paying like massive attention to the Democratic Party, not really understanding that the Democratic Party has such, I'm gonna say claws, and I know like there's some people in the black and brown community that's not gonna like this, but they have their claws so deep in the black and brown community that sometimes it's like disgusting to me. Now, this doesn't mean, I've said this plenty of times, this doesn't mean that I would not vote for a Democrat. I would, as long as they're not a tyrant, and I wouldn't vote for a Republican that's a tyrant. So some people are gonna say things like, oh well, Donald Trump got accused of this and this. Well, obviously that doesn't matter to the American people considering his approval rating, right? Because there are a lot of people that have misdemeanors and know what the American court system is like and how jacked up it is. So I knew Donald Trump having charges wasn't going to keep him from being the president. But for some reason, the Democrats did, which I find very interesting. But nonetheless, Bill O'Reilly makes a great point here. Because Stephen A. Smith is not in the political arena, even though he has said, yes, Joe Biden ruined the Democratic Party, Bill O'Reilly is saying, but no politician will say this. No governor will say this. No mayor will say this. He's listed people. He's like, I've asked people, do you think Joe Biden destroyed the Democratic Party? And they're like, no. I'm like, dude, okay, destroyed. Some people might not agree with that because they feel like destroyed is a strong word because we obviously still see Democrats. But we're not going to say that Joe Biden didn't taint it horribly. We're literally not going to say that because when we watched the Democrats lose every part of government, he did something. Like, he definitely did something.
Joe Biden destroyed it because he's the second worst president in our history. And it's not even close. I mean, you never beat James Buchanan because he led the Civil War happened.
I thought that was like I cracked up when I saw Bill do that. He literally says Joe Biden is the second worst president that we've ever had because you can't really get worse than Buchanan because he allowed the Civil War to happen. And I was like, wow, they're putting him second to Buchanan. That's pretty crazy. But they're also naming Donald Trump as one of the most overzealous presidents we've ever had, right? They're putting him next to Andrew Jackson. So, I mean, it's just kind of crazy to see how when you see these presidents kind of almost come back from history, but in different ways.
But Biden, if you read my message of the day on BillO'Reilly.com, the guy, that's why Trump is bouncing up and down like, a 18-year-old on speed. Because he's trying to reverse all of this stuff that's hurting every American. But the Democrats won't acknowledge that. And they also won't acknowledge that woke culture has destroyed the fabric of the party. That's what the main thing is all about, right?
You and I, you're absolutely right. You and I have been on TV together, and you know how I love to disagree with you, but when you're right, you're right. Damn it, I gotta concede it, and you're right.
It's true. I have to concede it too because Bill says it. They won't admit that the woke culture destroyed the party. Like, it's the very reason why they lost everything. And they won't admit that. And listen, there's nothing, I'm just going to go on record and say this, right? Everything can be okay until it becomes toxic, right? I don't think woke culture was necessarily horrible, but there's a toxic woke culture, right? To the point where you're like, oh yes, biological men can play in women's sports. Okay, well, you don't think that you pissed the country off by doing that? You obviously pissed most of it off because the Democrats lost everything. So even regardless of the fact that, well, we're about inclusion and that's fine. You could be about inclusion. But if you're going to run a whole presidential election on that, you're going to lose just like you just did. So there's nobody within the Democratic Party that, is a politician that will say, oh yeah, woke culture destroyed the Democratic Party. None of them are going to say that. Because if they think they're going to try in 2028 to do the same thing that they did last year, they're just going to lose again. And this is the reason why I said, at least right now for the foreseeable future, I do not see anybody that the Democrats can put up and this person can actually take the election in 2028. Now, there are people who say things like, hey, Gavin Newsom can do it. That is so stinking controversial and subjective. Maybe if we see some type of day and night change in the next 2.5 years, but if he were to do it right this minute, absolutely not. Josh Shapiro, I'm like, maybe. I'm not completely tossing him out. I mean, he's a pretty decently liked guy, from what I understand. I don't live far from Pennsylvania, so I know a decent amount about Pennsylvania and Josh Shapiro. He's not, he's not an unlikable guy from what I see. Like, he's decently favorable. So I'm not going to say that he would do horrible if he was a presidential candidate. But I mean, like, at this point, at the rate that Stephen A. Smith is going, he might be the one running in 2028.
On the money with that, and so when you take into account, first of all, Joe Biden was supposed to leave. He was supposed to be a transitional president, and then was feeling himself when the midterms wasn't a red wave in 2022, so he decides to stay in office, basically betrays the party, and then they got to come up with some elaborate scheme to get him up out of there. That's what I firmly believe, and it turned out to backfire on them. And when you look at the actions of Trump right now, and people talk about him trying to undo so much that they have done, whether you like or dislike what Trump is doing, and there's plenty of people in the center and clearly on the left who do dislike what he is doing, it is no doubt he is trying to do exactly what he said he was going to do, which is also the antithesis of what Democrats
Absolutely. He's going further.
Yeah.
He is going further.
Nobody expected him to prop up Putin. But as I wrote in my column, this is why he's propping up Putin. And there's a reason for it.
I read your column. It was a pretty damn good column, by the way, too. So
there's no pretty about it.
But you're damn good right. I gotta give credit where credit to you.
You gotta extract the word pretty. It's a damn good column. And that brings me to the damn good show that we're gonna do on March 30th in Westbury Music Fair on Long Island Sunday. I'm taking a chance putting this show together. It's my production company. And Stephen A. was nice enough to sign on. Here's why, and I'm very interested in your point of view on this.
Okay.
The United States has descended into tribalism. It's almost like sports in the sense that you root for a team, and in some places you'll punch out somebody who roots for another team. The United States has now descended into tribalism. And a lot of people don't want to hear anything other than what they believe.
Yeah.
That you can see it on cable television. All right.
Correct.
What we're doing, the three of us, is we're trying to meld three different audiences into one building, one show. There's no doubt the show is going to be good. No doubt. All right? But whether the people want that kind of a presentation, that's what's on the line.
I want to buy your house. I can pay you cash for your house, no matter what condition it's in.
Go.
Well, let me tell this to America right now.
I think, when Bill asks whether the people want that presentation, I think it's a fair question to ask, right? Because it's just like saying, do people want change, right? I love it because it instantly, I felt like the Holy Spirit brought to my mind the Bible verse where Jesus asked someone, do you want to be healed? I think it's a legitimate question. He's saying we're trying to take three groups, and he could be talking about it from any type of perspective, but he didn't really say, but I'm just going to guess that he means Democrat, Republican, and possibly independent. And he's like, we're going to take three groups, put them into one building, and kind of make one amalgamation, but we're going to do one people, but it's going to be an amalgamation. So we got Democrats, Republican, Independent, right? And the question is, do the people want this? Like, can the people come together and have this conversation without not rising to, if anything, you would be falling to tribalism? And he's saying that he believes that America's going down that path to where it looks like you vote for a team, and almost if you're not voting for that team, you'll punch the other person in the face because they're voting for the opposite team. And this is what I've been saying about the Democratic Party. Like, at best, I don't hate the Democratic Party, but they're troublesome to me right now because they're so tone deaf, and the things that they're doing is aimed at their own president. Whether you like President Trump or not, he's the president of the United States. He's not the president of the Republicans. He's not the president of the conservatives. So it's like when you see them on television and they're being so divisive, this is the reason why Americans can be made fun of. As someone who served in the military, I don't take kindly to things like this. I hate seeing things like that because it makes a country look weak. And countries that don't struggle with things like this, they are making fun of us. Whether they're saying it in our face or not, they are making fun of us. One of the biggest signs of a weak country is discord. It's one of the biggest signs. And when you see the Democrats acting like they're going to war with their own president, I'm like, are we in the Twilight Zone? Like, what exactly is happening here? So I think Bill's making an excellent point here.
Now, as they watch the show and they get set to hear about us, see us in person, March 30th in Westbury, New York. There's a saying that's out there, Bill is talking about bringing the rain. And what we mean by that is that no holds barred. You say what you feel, you mean what you say. And we don't have to worry about the other, one of us demonizing another. You disagree with some things I say, I disagree with some things you say. Same applies to Chris Cuomo. But we respect each other, we like each other, we love being on TV or in front of the camera together, and we get along just fine. And what we do in an event like this is remind Americans that it's okay to be honest and authentic and give anybody else your perspective and your point of view. The key is having an open enough mind.
That's right.
To listen to somebody who may disagree with you.
Well, I hope.
And it's nothing wrong with agreeing to disagree, and you can still get along. The key is to having an open enough mind. I want to say heart too, but some people are totally out of touch with their heart. That's a lie for a different day. But he makes so much sense when he says that. Like, it's the key to having an open mind. If you even understand the three people that are going to be a part of this show that Bill's talking about, it's himself, Bill O'Reilly, it's Stephen A. Smith, and it's Chris Cuomo. Now, if you know anything about these three people and even a little bit about news in the political world, these are not three people that actually would be sitting on the same side, right? Bill O'Reilly, I think, is a very well-rounded individual, and that's because he's been in politics a very long time. He's what we would call the OG. So Bill O'Reilly is like an OG of political news and politics, right? He, from my understanding of him and what I've seen of him over the years, I've liked him because he seems to be conservative leaning, right? I think that he understands the liberal side of things, but I think there are obvious reasons why he does not fully subscribe to the liberal side of things. However, Stephen A. Smith and Chris Cuomo, they would be on the more liberal side of things compared to Bill O'Reilly. And maybe possibly Chris Cuomo might even be what some might consider a leftist, but nonetheless, they're all three able to get on this show. They have been friends. They can agree to disagree on certain topics. It's going to be a great show. They're going to walk away and they're going to still be friends. This is why Bill's asking the question, do the people want this? Can we bring together Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and this amalgamation, become one thing, right? But still be a mixture, right? And we can get along, right? And we can agree to disagree. And we're not trying to fight each other. And we don't hate each other. And we're not saying, as an American, you're betraying me and I'm betraying you. So I think they're making a great point here.
That's the case.
As long as you're willing to do that, you can do it. And we do it all the time.
But I don't know in this period of history if that is going to drive people into a show. Again, the show is Westbury Music Fair, Long Island, March 30th, 3 p.m. Sunday. It's going to be a blast. Stephen A. will be there, and he promises to wear his pink jacket that he had on last night when the Celtics...
I did not promise a pink jacket that day. Not that day. I'm going to see you a couple of times before that.
I need to see that pink jacket in person.
What is your suit game going to look like? How about that? We know my suit game is going to be up to snuff.
Look at this. GQ consults with me. That's all
you gotta love Bill O'Reilly. GQ consults with him. But I love this. So they're gonna have a show March 30th. I think it said it's in Long Island, New York. It's March 30th at 3 p.m. You guys can go back a little bit and pause the screen there so you can get the information. But I think it's going to be a great show. I'm not far from there. I wish I could go to it. I'll think about it. I can probably drive there if I wanted to. But I don't know. I have to see what the tickets look like. But I think that it would be a great show. And, I understand Bill's question where he's like, I'm wondering if that type of candid conversation will drive people to a show. I think at this point in history it will. And I think that it will be a greater turnout of younger people than he may even be expecting. Because statistical trends show that politics mean a great deal to the younger generation right now, mainly millennials and Gen Z, and that makes total sense to me. Trump's cabinet is not total millennials, but it is pretty full of it. But that would make sense, right? Because I knew 6-7 years ago, statistics said that by the year of 2025, the generation of millennials would have the workforce by 75%. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are in the year 2025. And my generation has 75% of the workforce. I don't know what I have to say to the workforce other than good luck. That's the only thing I have to say. So with that being said, changing gears a little bit, President Trump had his first cabinet meeting today. I was able to watch it live. I thought it was productive. I thought he talked about a lot of good things. The press had great questions for President Trump, like always. He had Trump responses, like always. So it was a good thing to watch. We're not probably going to watch all of this. I didn't get that far into it myself, but I'm probably going to cut it off maybe at the 10-minute mark. Because I just want to hear I want you guys to hear a couple of questions that the press actually asked Elon. So Elon also was here, and he stood up for a moment and spoke about Doge and why Doge was important. He didn't touch on a lot of things he was finding when he spoke to the cabinet, but then the press started to kind of, dig into a couple of things, and, they asked him some questions. One thing I thought that was funny was, one reporter asked Elon, hey, Elon, I hear a bunch of praises and that the things that you're doing are going well, but are there any people within the cabinet that don't like what you're doing? And if that's the case, what are you doing to, kind of aid to that? And President Trump interjects and says, well, Elon, let the cabinet speak first. And everybody starts laughing, and President Trump's like, who here doesn't like what Elon's doing? Let's see, so we can kick him out. And everybody kind of laughs. I'm worried about that because I feel like that there are going to be plenty of leftists or some radical leftists that are going to clip that, and they're going to be like, look at this, Donald Trump is manipulating his cabinet. You see this? Like, if you don't like what he's doing and what Elon's doing, he said he's gonna kick you out of the cat. I mean, I could see MSNBC saying that, especially if Joy was still there, but Joy is not. So with that being said, we're gonna watch a couple of minutes of this and see how some of President Trump's first cabinet meeting went.
So Elon, if you could get up and explain where you are, how you're doing, and how much we're cutting, and it's an honor to have you. He's been a tremendously successful guy. He's really working so hard, and he's got businesses to run, and in many ways they say, how do you do this? And he's sacrificing a lot and getting a lot of praise, I'll tell you, but he's also getting hit, and we would expect that.
A lot of
that's the way
praise
it
and a lot of
works. So
hate
I'd
at
like
the
to
same
have
time.
Elon Musk please say a few words.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I actually just call myself a humble tech support here because this is actually, as crazy as it sounds, that is almost a literal description of the work that the Doge team is doing, is helping fix the government computer systems. Many of the systems are extremely old. They don't communicate. There are a lot of mistakes in the systems. The software doesn't work.
So right now, in case because Elon sounds a little low, but he has on a tech support shirt, and he opens and he kind of says that he's basically tech support for the government. He's being a little facetious, but he's saying not really, because that's one thing that Doge has been doing. We're working on the government's computer systems. He says they're very old, they're very out of date. He's like, they're not working, they're not communicating with each other. So it's a little bit of a play on words here, and he's kind of teasing a little bit, but he's also being honest about it. He's saying that is one thing Doge is doing, because the computer systems that the United States government is using, they're out of date, they're very old, they're not communicating with each other. I find that fascinating. At the same time, we have some of the best military weaponry in the world, but our government computers aren't communicating with one another. That's fascinating to me.
So we are actually tech support. It's ironic, but it's true. The overall goal here with the Doge team is to help address the enormous deficit. We simply cannot sustain as a country $2 trillion deficits. The interest rates, just the interest on the national debt, now exceeds the Defense Department spending. We spend a lot on the Defense Department. If we're spending over $1 trillion on interest, if this continues,
that amount is crazy.
now exceeds the Defense Department spending. We deficits. The interest rates, just the interest on the national debt, now exceeds the Defense Department.
That's crazy. So Elon says the country can't sustain what it's doing. We cannot sustain $2 trillion debt, right? So he says that just the interest rate, I had to rewind it because I had to make sure I was hearing this right. And just the interest rates on the national debt, he says just the interest rates now exceed the Defense Department's budget, like the entire spending budget. And I'm thinking to myself, just the interest rates. That's why I went back, because I'm thinking that's ridiculous. He goes into more depth and he says if this keeps going, what's going to happen is that America's going to go bankrupt. And this is the thing that I was saying maybe a week and a half ago when I was covering a live and Elon was talking about Doge. I said, this is where it confuses me, because even if you don't necessarily like what President Trump is doing, if you listen to the things Elon's saying, he's being very transparent when he's saying, listen, the way that we're doing this right now, it's not sustainable. We're not saying that rich people in America are going to get richer. We're saying everyone's going to get their butt kicked. If America stays on this trajectory, we cannot sustain $2 trillion in debt. Just the interest rates of $2 trillion in debt is already exceeding the Defense Department's budget. That is literally insane to hear Elon Musk say.
Department spending. We spend a lot on the Defense Department. If we're spending over $1 trillion on interest, if this continues, the country will become de facto bankrupt. It's not an optional thing, it is an essential thing. That's the reason I'm here. And taking a lot of flack, and getting a lot of death threats, by the way. And I like to step them up there. But if we don't do this,
That's crazy that Elon Musk is getting death threats. I'm like, oh my God. I'm not surprised though. I'm not surprised. You know, you're going in the pockets of some of the most richest liberals in America. So I'm sure he's pissing a lot of people off.
America will go bankrupt. That's why it has to be done. I'm confident at this point, knock on wood, knock on my wooden head, it's got a lot of wood there, that we can actually find $1 trillion in savings. That would be roughly 15% of the $7 trillion budget. And obviously, it can only be done with the support of everyone in this room. And I'd like to thank everyone for your support. Thank you very much. This can only be done with your support. So this is really, Doge is a support function for the president and for the agencies and departments to help achieve those savings and to effectively find 15% in reduction in fraud and waste. And we bring the receipts. So people say, like, well, is this real? Just go to Doge.gov. We line item by line item, we specify each item. So, and I should say, we won't make mistakes. We won't be perfect, but when we make a mistake, we'll fix it very quickly.
I like that Elon was transparent about that. You know, he said that some of their findings, people are questioning it and they're saying to him, like, is this real? And he's like, you know, just go to Doge.com. I mean, no, he said Doge.gov. Yeah, because they're a government entity, so of course it wouldn't be .com. But Doge.gov. And he's saying that line item by line item, they list like every single thing they're finding, the amount of money that's connected to it, if there's anything connected to it and they don't know where it went. He's being very transparent about it. And I appreciate the fact that he also said that, listen, we're going to make mistakes. Like, we're not going to be perfect, but if we do make mistakes, we're going to fix it very quickly. So I just appreciate that he's at least being transparent about that. And this is the thing that's kind of bothersome to me. Like, people aren't even appreciating the level of transparency they're getting from this administration. It's not about loving Donald Trump and loving the administration. It's like, do you want to know the truth or not? Like, I get it. Like, there are a lot of people who live by the statement, ignorance is bliss. I'm not one of those people. Ignorance actually pisses me off. So if I know that somebody's hiding something and I don't have the entire story, that's actually, like, you're not being truthful. And that's not, I'm not an ignorance is bliss type of person. So that actually would agitate me. And I think it should agitate other people when they have a wool being pulled over their eyes and they're perfectly fine with trying to walk down the street that way. At least appreciate the level of transparency that the administration is giving us, even if you don't like Trump or you didn't vote for him.
So, for example, with USAID, one of the things we accidentally canceled very briefly was Ebola prevention. I think Ebola went for Ebola prevention. So we restored the Ebola prevention immediately, and there was no interruption.
See, and that's the thing. He said one of the things that we canceled immediately was Ebola prevention, right? And he says, I think we all want Ebola prevention, right? He said, so we replaced it very, very quickly. We fixed it. And he said, and there was no interruption. So he says that right before he says, listen, we're going to make mistakes. Doge isn't perfect at all. Like, we're human beings, right? He said, but if we do make mistakes, I'm going to rectify them and I'm going to fix them very, very quickly. So I think that was a great example. Like, he said, listen, very early on, I kicked Ebola prevention. Like, I was like, no, we don't need that. And then he thought about it. He's like, no, I think we all want Ebola prevention. So he's like, I put it back. Like, I replaced it very, very quickly. The level of transparency is what I'm getting at. The people should appreciate. Yo, guys in the chat, hit that like button for me. It'll do me a great deal.
But we do need to move quickly if we're to achieve a $1 trillion deficit reduction in financial year 2026. It requires saving $4 billion per day, every day, from now through the end of September. But we can do it, and we will do it.
Okay, so that's the goal. So
it requires saving but we do need to move quickly if we're to achieve a $1 trillion deficit reduction in financial year 2026.
So he says that they do need to move quickly. He's saying it's not impossible. They do need to move quickly if they want to achieve $1 trillion deficit in a financial year of 2026. and he says that it requires saving
$4 billion per
$4 billion. Yo, that's crazy. $4 billion per day, every day, up until September.
day, every day, from now through the end of September.
So from now through the end of September. So Elon's goal is $7 trillion debt. Elon's goal is a 15% deficit. He's like, if we get to $1 trillion, we'll be at a 7%. I think he said they would be at with one, and I think his goal is 15. So he says the way we can get to 1 trillion by financial year 2026 is literally $400 billion per day, every day, from now until the end of September. Let me make sure I'm right. 4 billion, man, that's not even 4 million. That's crazy. $4 billion every day per day. From now, they had their first cabinet meeting today. So from now until the end of September. You know, when you hear numbers like that, I don't understand how people can't see why they would go in there and cut everything. I've said this. Donald Trump is a very successful businessman. Sure, he's had his ups and downs in his career, but he hasn't gone broke. He hasn't gone bankrupt, and plenty have, right? And Elon is the richest man in the world. And I'm thinking to myself, like, these dudes are moving. Like, that, those calculations are crazy. But to hear those numbers and to think about the level of debt the United States is in currently, it's like, how in the hell are they going to save $4 billion per day, every day, from now until the end of September?
Day, from now through the end of September. But we can do it, and we will do it. Thank you.
Would you have any questions of Elon while we're on the subject of those? Because we'll finish off with that. And if you have any questions, please ask. You could ask me or Elon. Go ahead.
All right, they're going to the press. Guys in the chat, hit that like button for me, guys. It'll do a great deal for me. It takes the video far for me, guys. Hit that like button. Say what's up in the chat. So we're going to press questions now.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Musk. I just wanted to ask you that President Trump put out a Truth Social today saying that everybody in the cabinet was happy with you. I just wondered if you had heard otherwise, and if you had heard anything about members of the cabinet who weren't happy with the way things were going, and if so, what are you doing to address those any dissatisfaction?
Please let the cabinet speak just for a second. You're unhappy with Elon. If you are, we'll throw him out there.
So that was the reporter that I mentioned earlier in the video that said, is anybody here unhappy with Elon? If they are, we'll throw them out of here. And like I said, I know Trump's being facetious and he's just kind of playing, but still, like, I'm worried about that being clipped because I know far leftists will say, President Donald Trump is manipulating his cabinet. He just threatened them and said, if you don't like what Elon's doing, he'll kick you out of the cabinet. And you can tell, everyone here can tell that he's joking, but that's what the extreme left will do.
And a lot of respect for Elon and that he's doing this, and some disagree a little bit, but I will tell you, for the most part, I think everyone's not only happy, they're thrilled. So go ahead, and I'm grateful.
And President Trump has put together, I think, the best cabinet ever. Literally. So, I do not give false praise.
Elon gave, I thought it was a pretty high praise.
Literally. So,
not only happy, they're thrilled. So go ahead, and I'm grateful.
And President Trump has put together, I think, the best cabinet ever.
Yeah, so I thought this was a pretty high regard. Elon says that President Trump has put together, he thinks, the best cabinet ever. And he says, I don't give false praise. If you know Elon Musk personality, he's just not that type of person. Like, he's very direct, can be pretty monotone. So he's like, I don't give false praise, but he feels like President Trump has put together the best cabinet ever. So I thought that was a pretty high regard compliment for him to give President Trump. I thought that was pretty cool of him and you know, humble to a certain degree.
Literally. So, and I do not give false praise. This is an incredible group of people. I don't think that such a talented team has actually ever been assembled. I think it's literally the best cabinet that the country's ever had. And I think the country should be incredibly appreciative of the people in this room.
Go ahead, please.
Now we know that's up for debate because there are plenty of people that have loved other cabinets and loved other presidents, right? I would say like Elon is coming from more of a modern era, right? So you're not going to be able to really go to a lot of like old school Americans or diehard Americans and say that President Trump was like better than somebody like Kennedy or somebody like even Lincoln or you have your fair share of Americans on the right and the left that also like Bill Clinton which was kind of shocking to me. So like I get Elon saying that he thinks it's the best ever, but I think he's talking more compare modern presidencies, maybe the last 10, 15 years.
Mr. President, thank you, Mr. Musk. About half of the government employees so far have responded to your request for what they've been doing over the past week. Is there a timeline in place for next moves for people being fired and when you'll expect to see results?
Yes. Well, to be clear, I think that email was best interpreted as a performance review, but
so this report is asking Elon a question about an email that was sent out. I think I covered this. If it wasn't yesterday, it was the day before. You guys know news moves fast. And I talked about the fact that Elon had sent, you've probably seen it in the news, he sent out an email to federal workers saying to reply within a certain time frame about what they did the last 5 days. So about 5 days ago or a week ago. No, they had to list 5 things that they did last week. That's what it was. They had to list 5 things they did last week. So he sent this email out. A lot of people, it caused a lot of uproar. Really, a lot of federal workers actually complied and answered, and him and President Trump confirmed that, which I thought was good, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm not saying every American is a Christian, but I know for myself as a Christian, you don't necessarily make things harder for your commander-in-chief, for the person who is in charge of the country, right? So from what I understand, a great deal of federal workers did comply to Elon's email. What I love here is that Elon's going to kind of break it down. He says that I think there was some misinterpretation about that email. A lot of people took that as it was a performance review. And Elon says it was actually a pulse check, right? So like a human pulse. That's what he says. He was like, it was actually a pulse check review. So he's going to go into depth.
Actually, it was a pulse check review. Do you have a pulse? You have a pulse and 2 neurons. So if you have a pulse and 2 neurons, you can reply to an email.
So he said it was a pulse check review. If you have a pulse and 2 neurons, you can reply to an email. He's not saying that to say that, people are stupid or dumb or, this should be easy. Don't be a pain in the butt. But what he's saying, he's going to go into a little bit detail. He's basically saying if you are alive, then you should be able to respond to this email. And there's a reason why he's going with alive, because he's going to go into depth and say, and again, I don't know how well you guys can hear Elon particularly. He was a little bit lower than President Trump. But he says that we believe that a lot of federal workers might be on the payroll or who are on the payroll might be dead. And that's the reason why they can't answer the email. So some of you might be like, oh my God, here goes those Republicans being crazy. What do he mean federal workers are dead? Well, I also did a live covering that Elon and Doge had some findings that there were 150-year-olds still receiving Social Security benefits. So the United States doesn't have not even one 150-year-old person alive here. So how would 150-year-olds be getting Social Security benefits? Well, obviously, it would be fraudulent, right? Either family members, close relatives, whatever have you, maybe politicians, who knows? Or someone's collecting that benefit, though, because Elon was able to find it. Now, when they went deeper into his findings, out of 18.9 million people who were receiving these benefits, 44,000 of them were dead and still receiving benefits. So this is the reason why, like, if people aren't watching the news, keeping up with the news, aren't trying to understand their politics, it's easy to kind of just sit on the side and be a naysayer and be really skeptical and be like, I don't trust this Doge thing. But in all actuality, the things that they're uncovering about our government are pretty nasty.
This is, I think not a high bar, is what I'm saying. Anyone can accomplish this? But what we are trying to get to the bottom of is we think there are a number of people on the payroll who are dead, which is probably why they can't respond.
So he said it. He said, to get to the bottom of this, what I'm saying is that we think there are a number of people on the federal payroll who are dead. And that is the reason why they can't respond to the email. So this is why I think this is so important to keep up with things like this, especially people in the black and brown community, because I know my people and my people that look like me, black and brown, black and Hispanic people, they're not watching the news all the time. Is it all of us who don't watch the news? Of course not. But the majority in our community really don't pay attention to the news, and that's because it's kind of negative, right? So it's like a lot of people don't really want to pay attention to the news. But for people like that look like me, I mean, I care about everybody getting correct news. Right? I have friends of all walks of life. I'm just not that person. But I do care about if my own community knows what the heck they're talking about and knows who the heck they're voting for. And sometimes they just don't. So Elon says it flat out. He says the bottom line is that we think there are a number of people on the federal payroll who are dead. And that is the reason why they can't answer the email.
And some people who are not real people, like they're literally fictional individuals that are collecting paychecks. Well, somebody's collecting paychecks on a fictional individual, so we're literally trying to figure out.
People who are not real individuals have been collecting fictional paychecks, or someone who isn't a real individual is collecting someone else's paycheck. That's literally what he's saying. These are like Doge findings.
Are these people real? Are they alive? And can they write an email? Which I think is a reasonable expectation for the American public would have at least that expectation of someone in the public sector.
Mr. Musk, roughly 1 million employees.
It's not a high bar, guys. Come on.
Roughly 1 million employees have responded so far to this email. Does that mean that the remaining 1 million or so federal employees now risk being terminated? And is it your understanding and expectation when you post a directive on X that the cabinet secretaries will follow that order? Because several agencies have instructed employees that this is voluntary or not to respond.
Yeah. Well, so. I guess it was like last week, the president encouraged me via Truth Social and also via a phone call to be more aggressive. And I was like, okay, yes, sir, Mr. President, we'll indeed do that. The president's the commander in chief. I do what the president asks. And I said, can we send out an email to everyone just saying what you get done last week? And the president said yes, so we did that. We got a partial response. We're going to send another email. But our goal is not to be capricious or unfair. We want to give people every opportunity to send an email. And the email could simply be, what I'm working on is too sensitive or classified to describe.
Right.
Like literally just, that would be sufficient. I think this is just common sense.
And what is your target?
Yeah, and this, you see, they're asking these facetious questions like, okay, so about 1 million people have responded. So does that mean that the 1 million people who haven't, are risking being terminated? And Elon is saying, we're not trying to be capricious here. We're not trying to, necessarily even violate any type of level of security. He's like, even if someone sends us an email saying what I'm working on is too sensitive for me to go in detail, he's like, even that is sufficient. So he's not actually, like, this is what I'm saying about the media and the leftists. Like, he's not actually trying to fire people, and they're not actually trying to terrorize federal government workers. What he just said was that we believe that there are a number of federal workers who are on the government payroll that are dead. So if they are dead, how are they still on the payroll? That means that there is someone collecting that paycheck. So Elon is like, hey, here's an easy way that we can figure that out. You're on the payroll, send me an email on what you did. Just give me 5 things. And if you can't, just write a sentence about why you can't. So I don't think that this is a big deal. And that's probably because in no way, shape, or form right now, I'm not breaking the law, right? Like if my boss called me right now and said, Karen, can you please give me an email about 5 things you worked on last week? She would get it in 5 to 6 minutes. So I don't understand why federal workers are literally like, don't respond to this email. Look at what Doge is doing. They're harassing workers. No, they're not. Some people are just lying. Like some people are literally just not being honest.
Number for how many workers, employees you're looking to cut total?
we wish to keep everyone who is doing a job that is essential and doing that job well. But if the job is not essential, or they're not doing the job well, they obviously should not be on the public payroll.
Elon said people who are doing, he said, the reporter asked how many people do you plan on letting go? And he said, listen, like, if the jobs that are essential we're keeping, he's like, if the job is essential and you're doing your job well, then we're going to keep you. If the job's not essential and you're not doing your job well, then come on, ladies and gentlemen, what would be the reason for the job? And I think we can all agree to that.
Wait. I'd like to add that those million people that haven't responded, though, Elon, they are on the bubble. You know, I wouldn't say that we're thrilled about it. You know, they haven't responded. Now, maybe they don't exist. Maybe we're paying people that don't exist. Don't forget, we just got here. This group just got here. But those people are on the bubble, as they say. You know, maybe they're going to be gone. Maybe they're not around. Maybe they have other jobs. Maybe they moved and they're not where they're supposed to be. A lot of things could have happened. I wouldn't say that Biden ran a very tight administration. They spent money like nobody's ever spent money before. Wasted money. The Green New Scam, all of the different things they spent money on. And you've seen that. We've seen that with some of the things that I read in speeches. I read them and people can't believe when I read them. 20 million here, 30 million here for, you know, a little educational course on something. Circumcision, right? Circumcision. $20 million to inform the people of such and such a country on other things and other things other than that. So, yeah, those people are, right now we're trying to find out who those people are that haven't responded. Now, there'll be some agencies like Rocco has people.
So I'm going to kind of cut it right there, guys, because I do want you to go back and watch this on your own. Like, I think it's important for you. I covered it from ABC 10. So, you know, pretty much a mainstream media, but they did pretty well, and that's probably because I caught it fairly early. This one says 4 hours ago, but like I said, I watched it live. But I just like the way President Trump answered that. I wanted to stop when Elon was he kind of stopped and wanted to answer some things instead. And he talks about, you know, the government workers who haven't responded, because the reporters are asking a lot about the government workers who haven't responded to Elon's email. And President Trump was honest. He said, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. They're on the bubble, as they would say, right? So you think about a person riding a bubble, bubbles pop, right? So he's saying like, they're gonna be gone, they could be gone. He's like, they might be moved, they might be put in areas where they should be, or they might be somewhere right now where they shouldn't be, right? So you know, he's learned a lot from his first term. He doesn't talk as quick. Like his first term, he would just kind of like blurt answers out and like tell on himself a lot. And like this term, I like it. I like the way he's doing it, because he really does keep mainstream media guessing, and he's doing that on purpose because he knows that they don't report correctly. So he's not going to, you know, say exactly what's going to happen, but he's like, listen, for lack of better terms, he's like, don't get comfortable. Just because you didn't answer the email and your bosses are telling you, you know, ignore that, he's going to be sued, he's going to be impeached. Like, don't get comfortable, because they've tried to come for him lots of times and it obviously hasn't worked. And I don't think this time it especially is going to work. But President Trump is being direct and he's being blatant. He's saying, listen, these people are kind of on the bubble, you know, like this group just got here, meaning his cabinet. He's like, we might be paying people that don't even exist, and that's because of those findings, right? So he's saying like, yeah, they are on the bubble if they're not going to answer the email at all. They could be moved, they could be fired, they could be removed, relocated. He's like, I'm not sure, but they're not exactly safe. So I can appreciate the fact that President Trump was just that transparent. All right, guys, so we're going to jump to the last clip of the live. And here on this channel, we always say that we end with a clip from Cliff. Cliff Bluell is a YouTube content creator who covers Christian content. I love Cliff's content. I always say that go to his channel, check out some of his shorts. I think it's a great way to get to know Jesus better, no matter where you're at. Like, he covers a lot of things that in very short format, but he does well. You can understand it. He doesn't try to get, you know, all super theological so he can lose people. He just does it for the simple layperson, and I appreciate that. So he covered something. Today we're looking at Christians take over an abortion clinic. So apparently there was an abortion clinic that I believe was closed down, and then there was a group of Christians that I believe hosted a Bible study in it. Cliff is going to go deeper into detail, but I just love this because when I was watching it, trying to like figure out which one I wanted to play for you guys, instantly the Holy Spirit brought to my mind, like, now look at that. A group of Christians going to a place to preach life and to bring life where death was occurring constantly. And I was like, God is just so dope. Like when he does stuff like that. I love the play. Like he's just so romantic with some of the stuff that he does. So let's jump into this and see what Cliff has for us today.
An abortion clinic shut down that Christians were praying over. Then they took over that clinic. Watch what happens.
How's it going?
Good morning. Hi.
This no longer operates as that, but we want to offer you hope, and his name is Jesus. This is a gift from God, a child that you carry, and we will help you with any of your needs and come around you. We won't leave you.
Thank you very much.
How's it going?
God bless you.
God bless you. God bless you.
An abortion clinic shut down that Christians were praying over.
So that's dope. So it was an abortion clinic that Christians were praying over, and it shut down. And then they went in there and they took it over. So other than hosting a Bible study, they're serving women now. So that's what that clip was. They showed a woman coming in there, I believe, to get an abortion, and the new owners say, this place is not that anymore. It doesn't operate like that. We are actually, what you're carrying inside of you, that baby is from God, and we're actually here to help you. Like, we're going to cover all your needs, whatever you need from us, just let us know, and we're going to walk with you. And the lady actually walks out of the abortion clinic, and she's going to keep her baby. So again, like I love it. Like as a Christian, I'm very unapologetic about my faith. Scripture says that, if you deny me in front of people, I'll deny you in front of my Father in heaven. Here's the thing. I don't care what you believe. I do care about if people know Jesus, but here's where I love the way God has everything set up. Man will return back to dust. And regardless of what we believe, here's one ticket we all gonna punch: death. And at one point when I was younger in my life, I used to be very afraid of death. And it was before I was walking with Christ. But just the fear of it, like, oh my God, am I going to be able to hear or see or taste or remember and I would be young, I would be like 9, 10 years old thinking all of this stuff. And as I have walked with Christ throughout my life, as my relationship has gotten close, God is my friend. Like, I love the presence of God. I don't know, I probably wouldn't be here without God, right? So when I think about the closeness that I have with God now, death is not so scary for me anymore. At one point, just thinking about it I would be riddled with anxiety. But now I don't think about death the same way, because Christians have a destination. This is why I say that I don't really care like what someone believes, because everyone's going to punch the death ticket. And at the end of the day, sometimes, because I have done hospice work in ministry and I've done pastoral care where I've gotten the privilege and opportunity to go to the hospital and be with people during their last days here on the earth. And sometimes I wasn't always the primary person to go. At first, I was an assistant, and I would go with my chaplain, especially when I was on active duty. And I actually got the opportunity to watch my chaplain sit with people that I've heard pastors preach about it, but till the last breath, they're so indignant about there is no God and they won't believe, and wherever I'm going next, that's what I deserve, and they just will not give their life to Christ. And it was like so off-putting to me that someone can literally get to that point and just be like, yeah, I don't care, but it makes sense, because scripture talks about it. It's just so sad to see. In those moments, being there with my chaplain, it was sad to see. And he would still pray for the person. He would still ask God to give this person mercy as they were dying. But that person with their last breaths would not be willing to say, Jesus, I give my life to you. And I always thought that was fascinating. So here's the thing that I learned, as growing up, and then getting a privilege to work in ministry, and then being able to go out and just interact with people and have the knowledge that I have been given by God about God. I've learned that it takes people a lot of time to get curious about God. I don't really know why that is, but it just does. And I think part of it is because God has made us such unique beings, right? Like, in our own right, we can be very powerful people, very majestic people, very beautiful people, very successful people. And it's like we get so caught up on that stuff that the big picture just gets thrown out of the window. And this is what I love about Jesus. This is what I love about God and what he has shown me. Earth is not the big picture, you know, like YOLO's not it. Like this, Christians don't only live once. And that's so special to me. So on the other side of that, in hospice care, I have also gotten a chance to be with a chaplain and sometimes be by myself and spend someone's last days with them. And it's such an honor to do. It's such an honor to do. There was a point in my life where I would never even say something like that. But it truly is. You know, the first couple times it was really sad. You know, it was really sad to sit near a hospital bed with someone and know like this person only has like this person's not going to make it till next Thursday, or they're not going to see Halloween, or they're not going to see Thanksgiving. And sitting with the people who were willing to give their life to Christ, it was such a different outcome as they took their last breath compared to people that were not. And this is where I love the way just God has orchestrated everything, because we're all gonna die. And it's like dying is just not so scary for me anymore because of my relationship with Jesus. And that means a whole ton. Like, you guys don't know a lot about my prior life, but that means a ton, because before that, death scared the crap out of me. It scared the hell out of me. Just thinking about it, thinking about what was coming next. Would I be able to breathe? Like, it was just crazy stuff. And like, while I said I was a young person thinking about it, now it's like, even the times that I've encountered death recently in my life, like my wife's always like, man, like the way you handle that, like, I don't think that I'm going to be able to do that. And I'm like, babe, you're going to be able to do it because I'm with you. But still, she's like death, me and my wife have two very different views of death. She's a Christian, you know, she's not a non-believer, but she doesn't take it on the same way that I do, you know. And I think that God has given me a privilege to be able to have such a view of death, right? Paul said to live is Christ, to die is to gain. And it's like, when I think about that, some people might think, well, what am I gaining if I die? And it's like, now I know we're gaining everything. We're gaining everything. So it's, you know, walking on this side of life is very different. I remember what it was like to not be a believer. And I will remember what it was like to do everything in my own will, in my own right, and think to myself, like, well, I'm only going to go to God when I really need something. Or because I had no knowledge of God, I would be like, well, God's busy. And it's like, when I hear people say things like that now, it's comical to me. And honestly, sometimes I think it's cute in a sense of, it's like, oh, this person they just don't know how awesome and powerful their Heavenly Father really is. They think that if something's going on in Japan, he can't handle something in New York. How cute. You know, and I used to at one point have that perspective about God, but surely not anymore. So I hope you guys enjoyed the clip. I'm always going to end my lives with a clip from Cliff, because that's what the Holy Spirit has put on my heart. So take that, share it with somebody, tell someone something you've learned. And until next time, guys, which is tomorrow, right? Tomorrow, February 27th, on a Thursday. We're going to be back here at 3:30. Probably be a little bit earlier tomorrow. I could have come on earlier, but I was just enjoying my wife's company, so I didn't feel like it, if I'm honest. But I might be on tomorrow, 3:15, 3 o'clock. But anywhere from 3 to 3:30, I'll be on live again. And we'll be reacting to the crazy media in our crazy world today, right? But it's okay, because Jesus is on the throne, right? So guys, until next time, what do I always say? Take care of yourselves, love one another. Peace.